The Elysium drifted in the vast emptiness of space, its engines silent as the crew monitored the comms array. Captain Lena Drake stood at the command console, eyes locked on the flickering lights of the holodisplay. The signal pulsed again, a deep, guttural sound that sent a shiver through her. "That's not a distress call," Lieutenant Kavarn said from his station, frowning as the sound reverberated through the hull. "It's something else. A warning." Lena tightened her grip on the armrest. A warning meant danger, but it also meant a decision. She had learned long ago that the universe didn't give second chances to those who hesitated. Her crew waited, eyes flicking nervously between the flashing screens and their captain. They trusted her, relied on her to make the call. For a moment, she felt the weight of 1,000 past decisions on her shoulders, but she brushed the thought aside. Focus. Location? Lena's voice was steady, though her mind raced. She needed facts, not theories. Outer edge of the Heron system, Kavarn replied. Uncharted. Looks like an old station, abandoned, mostly. Mostly? Lena shot him a glance, her brow furrowed. Kavarn's fingers danced across the control panel, pulling up a visual feed. The image on the screen flickered, a massive structure, dark and lifeless, orbiting a decaying star. The station is dead, but I'm picking up movement. Faint. It's hard to get a precise reading. Lena leaned forward, her pulse quickening. An abandoned station at the edge of known space, sending out a warning? It didn't sit right. What else could be out there? Could be pirates, scavengers. Kavarn offered, though his tone suggested he didn't quite believe it. Or worse. Lena stood and crossed the bridge, her boots echoing against the cold metal floor. The air in the ship was tense, heavy with uncertainty. She stared at the distant image of the station, its silent corridors hiding secrets she wasn't sure she wanted to uncover. But something compelled her forward. Duty? Curiosity? A need to protect her crew? Whatever it was, it wouldn't let her turn away. Prep the shuttle, Lena ordered, her voice cutting through the quiet. I'm leading the scouting party. We need to know what's out there. Kavarn's head snapped up, concern etched across his face. Captain, with all due respect, we don't know what we're walking into. That signal, it's not just a random beacon. It's deliberate. Someone, or something, wants us to stay away. Lena met his gaze, her expression firm. And that's exactly why we need to investigate. If there's a threat, we can't let it reach anyone else. We're the closest ship, and we're equipped to handle it. We don't run from danger, Lieutenant. We face it. Kavarn hesitated, but he knew better than to argue when Lena had made up her mind. Understood, Captain? I'll have the team ready in 10. As the bridge crew scrambled to prepare, Lena returned to her command seat, her eyes still on the station. Her instincts told her this wasn't just a routine mission. Something far worse lurked in the shadows, and they were about to uncover it. The deep space around them seemed to close in, the silence oppressive, like the calm before a storm. The warning signal pulsed again, louder this time, as if urging them to turn back. But Lena Drake had never been one to turn away from a challenge. And this, she sensed, would be the greatest challenge of all. The shuttle shuddered as it descended toward the lifeless station, a palpable tension hanging in the air. Captain Lena Drake stood at the front, her hands gripping the rail as the crew behind her prepared for the unknown. The dark station loomed larger in the viewport, its twisted architecture casting eerie shadows across the shuttle. 2 minutes until docking, Lieutenant Kavarn announced from the cockpit, his voice betraying a hint of unease. Lena's gaze remained fixed ahead. Keep the shields up. We don't know what we're walking into. The rest of the team sat in silence, their expressions a mix of anxiety and determination. Sergeant Riggs, a towering figure of muscle and discipline, checked his weapon with mechanical precision. Beside him, Specialist Yara, the team's tech expert, tapped nervously at her data pad, analyzing every scrap of data she could pull from the station's faint signals. Yara broke the silence. Captain, the station's systems are barely functional. Life support is running on emergency power, and I'm still picking up movement in the lower levels. Lena glanced at her, Any idea what kind of movement? Yara hesitated, her fingers hovering over the pad. It's irregular. Could be malfunctioning drones, or something, alive. Riggs let out a low grunt. Alive? In that thing? It looks like it hasn't seen a living soul in decades. Stay focused, Lena interjected, her voice firm but calm. We're here to assess, not speculate. As the shuttle neared the station, the artificial gravity of the docking bay kicked in, making the floor hum beneath their feet. A metallic clang echoed through the vessel as they latched onto the docking clamps. The shuttle hissed as it sealed against the derelict station, and the door began to slide open. A gust of stale, metallic air rushed into the cabin, bringing with it the faint scent of decay. Lena's eyes narrowed as she stepped forward, her boots clanking against the metal ramp. The station's interior was dark, save for a few flickering lights that cast long, jagged shadows across the walls. The silence was suffocating. Stay sharp, Lena ordered, her voice barely above a whisper. We move as a unit. Riggs, take point. Yara, stay close. The team moved with precision, their footsteps echoing down the corridor as they ventured deeper into the station. Every creak of the metal, every hiss of decompression sent shivers down their spines. The deeper they went, the colder it became, and the sense of something lurking just beyond their sight grew stronger. Riggs stopped suddenly, raising a fist. Hold! Lena stepped up beside him, her pulse quickening. At the end of the corridor, a door hung slightly ajar, the metal warped and twisted as if something had forced its way through. Yara, scan it, Lena instructed, keeping her voice steady. Yara knelt, her datapad flickering to life as she waved a scanner toward the door. Her brow furrowed. There's something on the other side. Movement. It's faint, but it's there. Lena's hand tightened on her sidearm. We breach together. No one moves ahead. The team gathered around the door, weapons drawn. Riggs placed a hand on the handle, his muscles tensed. The door creaked as it slid open, revealing a pitch-black room beyond. Lena activated her helmet light, casting a narrow beam into the darkness. The light swept across the room, revealing broken equipment, shattered glass, and something else. Captain, Yara whispered, her voice trembling. In the far corner of the room, a shape stirred, small, humanoid, but wrong. Its limbs were elongated, its skin pale and cracked like old porcelain. It moved slowly, as if waking from a deep slumber, its head turning toward them with jerky, unnatural movements. Lena felt her heart race. Back up. Slowly. The creature's eyes, hollow and lifeless, fixed on them. A low, guttural sound echoed through the chamber, and the station's lights flickered. The warning signal pulsed again, louder this time, as if the station itself was screaming. Move! Lena barked, her voice cutting through the panic as the team began to retreat. But it was too late. The creature lunged, its movements suddenly fast, too fast. Sensory details. The cold, metallic scent of the station mixes with the eerie silence and flickering lights to create a tense atmosphere. The sensation of stale air and the suffocating darkness add to the feeling of foreboding. Every sound, the creaking metal, the hiss of decompression, heightens the tension, pulling the reader deeper into the eerie environment. Character development. Lena remains calm and decisive, taking charge even as the tension escalates. Her leadership is tested as she faces the unknown, while Yara's tech skills are pushed to their limits, revealing her unease in the face of danger. Riggs, the stoic soldier, balances the team with his unwavering focus. Plot progression. The team has now entered the station and encountered a mysterious, possibly hostile entity. The tension rises with the discovery of the creature, setting the stage for a high-stakes confrontation in the next chapter. World building. The station's decaying, abandoned structure adds depth to the setting, emphasizing the isolation and danger of deep space. The unsettling creature hints at a larger, more ominous presence lurking within the station. Great job pressing forward with this exciting story. Keep up the energy, you're creating something truly gripping. The creature's hollow eyes gleamed in the flickering light, its twisted form poised like a predator. Captain Lena Drake kept her weapon trained on it, her pulse pounding in her ears. The eerie silence of the station was shattered by the low, guttural growl that echoed from the room's far corner. "Steady," Lena whispered, her voice barely audible as her team formed up behind her. Sergeant Riggs, ever the reliable soldier, took a step forward, his rifle leveled, eyes unblinking. Specialist Yara, still shaken, stayed close behind, her datapad clutched tightly to her chest as if it could protect her from what lurked in the darkness. The creature moved, quick, almost a blur. Its long, spindly arms reached out as if testing the air, its head twitching unnervingly from side to side. It made no move toward them, but its presence alone was enough to fill the room with tension so thick it was suffocating. "Captain, orders?" Riggs' voice was a low growl, his finger hovering over the trigger. Lena's mind raced. Shooting could provoke it, but retreating might leave them vulnerable to an ambush. She assessed the creature with narrowed eyes, noting its skeletal frame, the gaunt, pale skin that clung to it like old parchment. It didn't appear to be entirely organic either. Patches of metal glinted where flesh had been stripped away. This thing wasn't just a lost experiment. It was a weapon. "We don't engage unless it does," Lena said, keeping her voice steady. "Yara, any life signs?" Yara scanned the room, her fingers shaking as they tapped commands into her datapad. "Nothing conclusive, Captain. It's like it's barely alive, but there's definitely something powering it. Could be cybernetic." "Great," Riggs muttered. "A walking corpse that runs on batteries. Just what we needed." The creature twitched again, its head jerking in their direction, and suddenly it bolted, an impossible speed that sent a shockwave through the room. Lena reacted instinctively, shouting, "Fall back!" They scrambled out of the doorway, Riggs laying down covering fire as Lena and Yara darted into the hallway. Bullets pinged off the metal walls as the creature dodged with inhuman precision, its limbs stretching and contorting as it pursued them. The corridor was a narrow labyrinth of rusted panels and flickering lights. Lena's heart raced as they fled deeper into the station, the distant sound of the creature's clawed feet scraping against the floor growing louder. It was fast, too fast. "Captain?" Yara's voice broke the tension, her face pale as she glanced over her shoulder. "It's gaining on us!" Lena cursed under her breath. They needed to lose it, and fast. Up ahead, the corridor split into two. Without hesitation, she pointed to the right. "Riggs, take Yara and head that way. I'll draw it off." "No way!" Riggs growled, skidding to a halt. "We stick together." "That's an order!" Lena barked, locking eyes with him. For a moment, the two stood frozen in a silent standoff, but then Riggs nodded begrudgingly. "Don't get yourself killed," he muttered, pulling Yara by the arm and rushing down the right passage. Lena spun on her heels and darted left, her boots pounding against the metal floor as she sprinted down the shadowed corridor. The sound of the creature shifted, its focus now fully on her. The scrape of its claws grew louder, closer. It was hunting her. She dashed into an empty room at the end of the hall, slamming the door behind her. Her breathing was ragged as she scanned the room for anything to use. It was empty except for a few shattered crates and a terminal that flickered faintly in the corner. The door rattled behind her, the creature's claws scratching against the metal. Lena's grip tightened on her sidearm. She backed into the room slowly, her eyes darting between the door and the terminal. Maybe it still worked. Her fingers flew over the keys, desperately trying to access any controls for the station. The screen blinked to life, a series of garbled text scrolling past. Power systems, defense protocols, anything. Her heart sank. Most of the station's systems were offline. The door creaked, bending inward as the creature slammed against it. "Come on," Lena muttered, her fingers trembling as she continued to type. The creature's growls grew louder, more frantic. Then, a faint blue light flickered on the screen, an emergency lockdown protocol. "Yes." She hit the command just as the door burst open. The creature lunged, but a heavy metal grate dropped from the ceiling, sealing the doorway just in time. The creature slammed into it with a deafening thud, screeching as it clawed at the barrier. Lena exhaled, her legs shaky as the adrenaline began to wear off. She backed away from the terminal, her eyes never leaving the creature, which now thrashed against the barrier in a frenzied rage. For now, it was contained. But Lena knew this was only a temporary solution. Captain Lena Drake paced across the dimly lit control room, her mind racing. The emergency lockdown protocol had bought them time, but it wouldn't last. Outside the door, the creature still thrashed, slamming into the heavy metal grate, its growls echoing through the station's cold, decaying walls. Sergeant Riggs and Specialist Yara rejoined her, both winded from their sprint down the corridor. Riggs looked over his shoulder, uneasy. "How long until that thing breaks through?" Lena didn't answer immediately. She stared at the screen, its flickering blue light casting shadows on her face. "Not long," she finally muttered. "These grates were built to contain breaches, not whatever that is." Yara knelt by the terminal, her fingers gliding over the keyboard. "We need more than a temporary solution. This thing's part organic, part machine, like it's been engineered for something. Maybe there's information in the station's logs. I can try accessing the data archive." Lena nodded. "Do it. We need answers. Fast." Yara worked quickly, pulling up corrupted files and encrypted data as the faint whir of the station's ancient systems filled the room. Outside, the creature slammed into the grate again, each impact louder, more forceful. They didn't have much time. Riggs stepped closer to Lena, his voice low. "Captain, whatever that thing is, it's not alone, right? You said this was a research station. What if there's more of them?" Lena's eyes hardened. It was a possibility she had considered but hadn't voiced. If this creature was an experiment, the station could be crawling with them, hidden in the shadows, waiting for the right moment. "We stay focused. We'll deal with what's in front of us first." The room was silent except for Yara's frantic typing and the creature's relentless pounding. Then, the terminal beeped, and Yara let out a triumphant gasp. "Got something." Lena and Riggs crowded around the screen as a file opened, a log entry from over 50 years ago. The station's lead scientist, Dr. Alex Vossen, appeared on the grainy display. His face was gaunt, eyes hollow with exhaustion. "Project Lazarus was supposed to change everything," Vossen began, his voice trembling. "We wanted to push the boundaries of life and death, create a hybrid species that could survive anything. But we went too far. We lost control. The subjects..." The video flickered, and Vossen's face twisted in fear. "They're not human anymore. They're something else. If anyone finds this, leave. Destroy the station. Don't try to contain them." The recording cut off, and silence filled the room once more. "Project Lazarus," Riggs muttered, shaking his head. "We're dealing with monsters they couldn't control." "Of course." Lena clenched her jaw, her mind spinning. This was no ordinary research station, it was a breeding ground for abominations, and they were trapped in the middle of it. "We need to find the power core and overload it. If we can destroy the station, we take these things with it." "But the lockdown," Yara interjected. "It's preventing access to the core. We can't disable it from here. We'd have to manually bypass the security system, and that's..." Lena cut her off. "Risky. I know. But it's our only shot." She turned to Riggs. "Get your weapons ready. We're moving." Riggs nodded grimly and readied his rifle, slinging a spare battery pack over his shoulder. Yara hesitated, her fingers hovering over the terminal. "Captain, are we sure about this? What if there's another way?" Lena's gaze softened, but her resolve remained firm. "Yara, if we don't act now, we won't make it off this station alive. The longer we wait, the more these creatures close in on us. We have to end this, now." Yara swallowed hard and nodded, pulling out her toolkit. "Okay, I'll guide us through the security systems, but we'll have to reach the main control hub." They moved quickly, Lena leading the way as they exited the control room. The creature's screeches echoed down the hall, its clawed hands still scraping against the barrier, but they had no time to look back. Every step forward felt like descending deeper into the jaws of a nightmare. The corridors grew narrower, the the station's deteriorating infrastructure evident in the cracked walls and malfunctioning lights. Each turn felt more ominous than the last, the tension rising with every step. As they approached the control hub, a distant noise, a series of faint, rhythmic thuds, cut through the silence. Lena held up a hand, signaling them to stop. Riggs' grip tightened on his rifle. "Captain, you hear that?" Lena nodded, eyes scanning the dark hallway ahead. The noise grew louder, and with it came a deep, rumbling sound, like the low growl of an approaching predator. "They're coming," Yara whispered, fear evident in her voice. Lena's heart pounded in her chest as she peered into the darkness, her senses heightened. It wasn't just one creature this time. The sound echoed from multiple directions, a harbinger of what was to come. "We're running out of time," Lena said, her voice steady but urgent. "We need to get to the core before they reach us." They moved faster now, pushing forward despite the growing dread that crept into their minds. The thudding grew louder, closer, as if the station itself was alive with the movements of the creatures lurking within. Finally, they reached the main control hub. Yara rushed to the terminal, her fingers flying over the interface as Lena and Riggs stood guard, their weapons raised. The air grew thick with tension, the sound of approaching creatures intensifying. "We're almost there," Yara said, her voice tight with concentration. "Just a little more." A loud crash echoed through the corridor behind them. Lena spun, her eyes locking onto the shadows creeping toward them. "They've found us," she said, her voice low and grim. "Hold the line,"